old 10 years from now.
Kant was responding to the influential Scottish philosopher David Hume. Hume was an empiricist. He believed that all knowledge came from the senses, that we learn about the world from what we absorb from outside of us.
From this, Hume made a radical claim that if we only know the sun rises and sets from experience, or from the experience of others, from what we've been told, no matter how many times we watch it rise, no matter how many times it's been recorded rising throughout history, there is no certain proof that it will rise again tomorrow. We can only say that with each time we experience something happening, the chances of it happening again increase.
This deeply disturbed Kant. He said that it awoke him from his dogmatic slumber. It disturbed him so much because it shook the new scientific method that was emerging in Kant's time from having any secure scientific foundation. We might observe gravity working consistently, but this could change. After all, people believed many things throughout history that turned out to be false.
The second and related thing that disturbed Kant was that if Hume was right, that all of our knowledge came from outside of us, from experience through our senses, then we have no innate knowledge-making capacity for ourselves. If all comes from outside, we're just receptors, passively driven by outside stimuli, as Yuval puts it. Kant felt intuitively that this was wrong, that we have knowledge of our own, and that some scientific truths, for example, that everything that happens has a cause, or some mathematical truths, like 2 + 2 is 4, are true for us, for everyone, and doesn't come from outside experience. We just know it from within somehow.
Do we really have to go about like explorers with magnifying glasses searching for mathematics in nature? For followers of Hume's philosophy, surely it follows that numbers had to be discovered one at a time, counted out. Pythagoras could only find his theorem out in the world, in the wild. This surely wasn't true. Do we not have an innate capacity for working through some mathematical and scientific claims ourselves, independent of experience? Don't we know that numbers exist, even if we haven't counted them or thought of them ourselves?
As Roger Scruton puts it in his introduction, Kant wants to know, how can I come to know the world through pure reflection, without recourse to experience? This pure reflection is pure reason, the root of all thinking. In short, again, how do we, in here, constitute a cosmos out of chaos?
Kant wrote several influential books, but what's referred to as the first critique, the critique of pure reason, is the central one. It's where he answers the most fundamental of questions. How do we constitute meaning out of chaos? How do we create knowledge for ourselves? Okay, so first, what does reason mean for Kant?
Broadly, it means the process of thinking, the conditions, the rules, the operating system for thinking itself. If Hume was right, that everything comes from outside of us, then the very act of thinking makes little sense. If we get everything from outside, do we get the rules for thinking from outside of us too? Like picking up someone else's cookbook? If Hume was right, it would be like all the thinking was done for us before it even gets to us through the senses.
So in short, asking what reason is asking what thinking is if it was emptied of all of its content. That's why he says pure reason. Working out what this is could be unimaginably powerful. To know how to build and program on a great computer, of course you need to know how the source code works. Working this out is like finding the source of knowledge, stripped of everything else, a kind of meaning of life. Yovel writes that reason's interests are inherent to it and not directed at any external goal. In other words, human rationality is a goal-orientated activity whose goal lies in itself rather than in anything other than itself.
Pure reason is like this beaker, a cup, or a measuring jug. It takes the data of the outside world and shapes it, defines it in its own way. And reason does that by formulating concepts. Concepts are how we see the world.
As Kantian philosopher Paul Guyer puts it, the critique of pure reason argues that all knowledge requires both input from the senses and organisation by concepts, and that both sensory inputs and organising concepts have pure forms that we can know a priori, thus know to be universally and necessarily valid.
Okay, Kant uses that phrase a priori a lot. It just means independent of experience, before all thinking is done. The conditions for thought itself, universal. It's the elixir, the holy grail of pure thought. He says, a priori means what is left
when one removes from our experience everything that belongs to the senses.
He continues that
every cognition is called pure, that is not mixed with anything foreign to it.
pure thought receives, organises, judges and applies concepts to the raw data of experience. Kant also calls pure thought the understanding because, well, it attempts to understand the world.
Yovel writes that the senses supply the understanding with a crude element that is not yet a real object but only the material for it. And the understanding, a spontaneous factor, must order and shape this material according to its, the understanding's, own a priori modes of operation. Kant's responding to two traditions in philosophy that were new at the time. The empiricists, as we've seen, like Hume, who argued that all knowledge comes from experience, and the rationalists, people like Descartes and Spinoza, who argued that reason is the way to secure knowledge, like